Priya Sharma received the email at 6:47 in the morning. After 3 years as a structural engineering lead, her position had been eliminated. She wasn't alone. That morning, over 3,000 employees across every department opened identical messages. Your role is no longer required. 20% of NEOM's entire workforce eliminated in a single day. No warning, no transition period. Just an email at dawn and a flight home. The people who remain say privately this wasn't restructuring. It was the beginning of the end. But here's what Saudi Arabia doesn't want you to understand. You don't fire 20% of a workforce that is building the future. You fire them when the future has been canceled. In this video, I will expose the internal dynamics behind NEOM's mass layoff. I will reveal what departing employees are saying about the project's real direction, and I will show you why this layoff proves NEOM's original vision is being quietly abandoned. This week, sources within NEOM's human resources confirmed the reduction was closer to 25% when contractors are included. NEOM employed approximately 15,000 at peak, between 3,000 and 4,000 positions eliminated in weeks. The departments hit hardest tell the story: urban planning, structural engineering, residential design, transportation infrastructure. The teams responsible for building the line's core structure were gutted. The departments that survived were marketing and communications. The structural engineering division lost over 40%. The team designing the line's foundations was reduced from 68 specialists to 19. The urban planning team for 9 million residents was effectively dissolved. 12 of 14 senior planners terminated. The transportation division, responsible for internal transit systems, was cut by more than half. Dozens of active work streams were left without responsible teams. Calculations mid-review. Approvals pending from people who no longer worked there. Bloomberg reported NEOM described the cuts as a strategic realignment to focus on near-term deliverables. Strategic realignment. That is corporate speak for, we hired thousands to build something that isn't going to be built. The timing reveals everything. NEOM laid off the same quarter. Bloomberg confirmed the line scaled from 170 kilometers to 2.4. The scale back and layoff are the same event from different angles. You don't need planners for 9 million when the target became 300,000. You don't need structural engineers for 500-meter towers when you are building low-rise. The human cost is devastating. NEOM recruited aggressively from 2018 onward. Engineers, architects, and planners from 30 countries. Many relocated families. Children pulled from schools in London, Singapore, and Sydney. Homes sold. Multi-year contracts signed. One British project manager, who moved his family of 4, described the experience. The layoff didn't just hit senior professionals. Thousands of contract workers from South Asia and the Philippines were sent home with minimal notice. Many had paid recruitment fees of $5,000 to $10,000. Those fees are non-refundable. Workers who borrowed now face debt without employment. Human Rights Watch has documented similar patterns of recruitment debt exploitation across Gulf mega projects for years. The International Labor Organization estimates over 12,000 contract workers were affected when subcontractor reductions are counted. Severance terms were restrictive. Multiple former employees report being required to sign expanded NDAs as a condition of final pay. Those who refused the expanded agreement received reduced packages. Take the money and stay quiet or face consequences. One senior architect who declined the expanded NDA described the pressure. Remaining staff describe an organization in crisis. Morale among the surviving employees has completely collapsed according to multiple internal sources. Departments that lost key personnel struggle with institutional knowledge gaps. Projects reassigned to staff without relevant experience. One remaining coordinator described the atmosphere. "Half my team is gone," he said. "The people who understood the engineering are gone. Everyone who stayed is looking for the exit." Internal surveys show over 60% of surviving employees actively seeking external positions. The layoff created a self-reinforcing exodus. Recruitment firms report NEOM positions reposted multiple times with 0 successful hires. Qualified candidates are self-selecting out entirely. The brand is toxic in the engineering recruitment market. Headhunters describe NEOM as the assignment nobody accepts. The engineering knowledge lost cannot be transferred. It exists in the minds of people now working for Saudi Arabia's competitors. Project documentation left behind is incomplete by nature. Critical decisions, informal knowledge, the reasoning behind approach choices, all departed with the people who made them. The pattern follows a predictable corporate death spiral. NEOM is executing it textbook. 2018 through 21, aggressive hiring. Over 15,000 recruited globally with premium packages. 2022, first contraction. Hiring freezes. Contractor renewals delayed. No public acknowledgement. 2023, Bloomberg confirms scale back. Internal restructuring begins. Senior departures accelerate. 2024, the 20% layoff executes. Thousands eliminated. Expanded NDAs distributed. Morale collapses. 2025. The Financial Times publishes the quote that defined the collapse, letting MES down gently. 8 years, $50 billion. And their primary challenge is managing one man's expectations. Several factors made this layoff inevitable. First, you don't eliminate planning teams if you are still planning a city for millions. Second, expanded NDA signal management knows the gap between narrative and reality is legally dangerous. You don't pay for silence about success. Third, knowledge loss at this scale is irreversible. Replacing 20% of specialized engineers takes years. Memory cannot be reconstructed. Fourth, the talent market received the signal. Qualified engineers actively avoiding NEOM. The layoff poisoned recruitment permanently. Finally, Saudi youth unemployment remains above 11%. NEOM was supposed to create jobs, not eliminate them. Young Saudis who joined NEOM as their first career now face uncertain prospects in a market vision 2030 was supposed to transform. The layoff shattered the information barrier NEOM maintained for years. Former employees are speaking on every platform. LinkedIn has become a confessional. Former directors and engineers posting detailed accounts of dysfunction and ignored technical warnings. Reddit construction communities have accumulated thousands of first-hand accounts. The consistency across independent sources is damning. Facebook groups for NEOM workers transformed from community forums into support networks. For navigating unemployment and DAs, families faced the sharpest disruption. Children pulled from international schools mid-semester. Spouses returning to job markets they'd been absent from for years. Housing contracts broken, vehicles sold at loss, belongings shipped internationally at personal expense. The cost falls entirely on the terminated employee. Bloomberg, the Financial Times, and the Wall Street Journal all published detailed investigative pieces, citing former employees willing to speak despite NDA restrictions. The volume of willing sources overwhelmed NEOM's legal capacity to enforce silence. Saudi Arabia attempted to contain the narrative through legal pressure. Formal warnings sent to former staff who posted publicly. Legal letters threatening breach of contract litigation. But the mathematics are simple. You cannot silence 3,000 people simultaneously across 30 countries and a dozen platforms. The financial consequences compound the crisis. Severance for 3,000 to 4,000 premium employees is estimated at up to $1 billion. That is $1 billion in additional spending to dismantle a workforce that was itself a multi-billion-dollar investment in hiring, relocation, and training. PIF bears this entirely. Foreign investors never materialized at scale. Saudi Arabia's $21 billion deficit absorbs another hit. The layoff signals every remaining mega project. If NEOM cuts a quarter, what security does Trojena or Sindalah offer? Competing Gulf states recruited directly from NEOM's pool. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Qatar fast-tracked visas for former engineers. The talent Saudi Arabia spent years attracting is being absorbed by competitors within months. Dubai's construction sector saw a measurable influx of former NEOM professionals. Headhunters call it the largest involuntary talent transfer in Gulf history. Abu Dhabi's Masdar and Caesarea developments actively recruited NEOM sustainability and planning specialists. Doha absorbed transportation engineers. Singapore recruited AI specialists. The diaspora spans 4 continents. Each departure represents years of Saudi investment in recruitment, relocation, and specialized training, now directly benefiting the kingdom's competitors at zero cost. Saudi Arabia spent billions assembling the most talented megaproject workforce ever recruited, then handed it to rivals for free. Saudi Arabia's Saudization program positioned NEOM as the flagship employer for a new generation of Saudi engineers. The layoff destroyed that promise entirely. Why relocate your family to Saudi Arabia when the flagship project fires its workforce? By email at 6 in the morning? What does leadership know about remaining capacity? Internal assessments must show delivery ability rapidly diminishing. Acknowledging the layoff's meaning requires an uncomfortable truth. NEOM's vision required 15,000 professionals. Cutting to 10,000, while survivors plan exits, means even the reduced scope cannot be delivered. To be fair, restructuring is sometimes necessary. If NEOM is genuinely pivoting to technology, a different workforce would be required. But a genuine pivot communicates honestly. It explains direction. It retains transferable talent. NEOM has done none of these. The data center and AI investments are real and growing. Major technology companies from the United States and Asia committed to server farm infrastructure within the NEOM zone. These are legitimate assets, generating actual revenue. But server farms don't need 9 million residents or 170 kilometers of mirrored megastructure. They need cheap land, solar, and fiber cables, all of which could have been built for a fraction of $50 billion. The layoff confirms the original vision is dead. What remains is the question of how much more oil wealth Saudi Arabia will spend before admitting the pattern. The window for meaningful restructuring narrows with every departing specialist. Each week makes remaining scope harder to deliver. What happens when a project fires the people building it and claims it is still on track? Saudi Arabia hired the world's best engineers, then fired 20% and asked the rest to pretend everything was fine. 3,000 people scattered back to 30 countries, carrying the truth about what they saw inside NEOM. The NDAs can restrict specific details and project data. They cannot undo what those people witnessed with their own eyes over years of service. You've been told this is strategic realignment. The people who were fired call it something else. They call it the end. Your experience matters more than any corporate press release. Have you worked at NEOM or know someone who has? Share your story in the comments. Subscribe if you want to hear the voices they tried so hard to silence. 3,000 former employees are talking, and what they are saying about what happened inside those offices changes everything.